Discover the incredible journey of Daniel. Miraculous faith that transformed lions into blessings. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Daniel, a young Hebrew exile, found himself in the heart of Babylon during the reign of King Darius, serving as a high official among the Medes and Persians. His wisdom shone like the morning sun, drawing favor from the king, who recognized his integrity and understanding. Daniel's heart, however, did not belong to Babylon. It remained anchored in the promises of Yahweh, the God of Israel. Every day, 3 times a day, he knelt in prayer toward Jerusalem, a steadfast reminder of his covenant with the Almighty. As whispers of envy circulated through the palatial halls, officials plotted against him. They scrutinized his life, hoping to uncover a flaw, but found none. Daniel's heart was pure, a testimony to his devotion. Frustrated, they approached King Darius with flattery, manipulating his pride. "O king, establish a decree that for 30 days no petition shall be made to any god or man except to you." The king, swelled with pride, signed the decree, unaware that in doing so he had chained his most loyal servant. Evening cloaked the city, and Daniel learned of the edict. Fear did not grip his heart. Instead, it burned with a holy resolve. He entered his chamber, opened his windows toward Jerusalem, and prayed as he had always done. The other officials, lurking in shadows, smirked in satisfaction as they rushed to deliver the news to the king. Darius was distressed as he recognized his manipulation. With a heavy heart, he ordered Daniel, his faithful servant, to the lion's den, uttering a final blessing. "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." A stone was rolled over the den, sealing Daniel's fate. The night in the den stretched into deep shadows, filled with the growls and roars of hungry lions. Daniel trembled not, for he felt the divine presence of Yahweh surrounding him. As he closed his eyes, an angel descended, silencing the beasts with a whisper of peace. The hunger of the lions was tamed, for they became an instrument of God's glory, their powerful jaws now nothing but a shield. At dawn, King Darius hurried to the den, his anxiety palpable. "Daniel," he cried, "servant of the living God, has your God been able to deliver you from the lions?" Silence hung in the air like a heavy shroud, until finally Daniel responded, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the lions' mouths. They have not harmed me." Overjoyed, the king ordered Daniel to be lifted from the den, and a decree proclaimed the greatness of Daniel's God throughout the kingdom. Awe swept through the people, who marveled at the wonder of divine intervention that had turned a deadly trial into a miraculous testimony. They pondered the eternal mystery that echoed through their hearts. How had faith in Yahweh brought life from death? What purpose lay in this deliverance, igniting a flame of curiosity and reverence among the exiles? Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the echoes of Daniel's deliverance rang through the kingdom, hearts were turned toward the God who makes lions into blessings. What would happen next in the story of Daniel? What other wonders awaited those who placed their trust in Yahweh? The people of Babylon were left with a spark of hope, seeking the God of Israel who could turn the fiercest roars into whispers of peace. As the breath of dawn painted the skies with hues of gold, and the sun spilled light over the land, the edict issued by Darius echoed through the hearts of the people. Everywhere they spoke of the courage of Daniel, the faith that defied death, and the God who wrought such a miracle. King Darius, now bearing the burden of the world's attention, summoned all the governors and officials of Babylon. With a voice that commanded as much fear as it did reverence, he declared, "Come forth and witness the power of the Most High God." The hall was filled with silence, anticipation electrifying the air, as Darius shared the events that unfolded, how the royal seal had been placed over the mouth of the den, and how in his desperation he sought assurances from Daniel's God. "For he is indeed a living God," the king proclaimed, "enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion will have no end." This declaration stirred the hearts of the gathered assembly. Many, whose thoughts had been clouded by envy, began to contemplate the reality of a faith that could silence the jaws of lions. With each account that Darius recounted, the humility of Daniel became a legend, spreading like the morning mist over the mountains. But within the hearts of the jealous officials, bitterness festered. Already they schemed, plotting the demise of not only Daniel, but of the very idea that his God could rival the power of Babylon. In whispered tones, they gathered, weaving a plan to undermine the king's declaration of faith. "What if we turn the king's own decree against him?" they murmured, with smiles cloaked in shadows. Yet, Daniel remained undeterred by the clouds of discord gathering again around him. Knowing the ways of the world, he continued in his prayers to Yahweh, also praying for the hearts of those who sought his harm. With unwavering trust, he surrendered to God's sovereignty, believing that the Lord's plans for him were not for evil, but for a future filled with hope. Days turned into weeks, and the echoes of Daniel's survival began to awaken the spirit of the exiles. He ventured into the city, sharing of the glory of God with all who would listen. His words were infused with the essence of divine power, speaking of deliverance, purpose, and hope. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart," he would say, "and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." Yet the serpent of jealousy could not lay dormant. The king's officials, fueled by malice, devised their wicked plan. Under the guise of loyalty, they approached King Darius once more. "O king," they said, "let us amend your decree. For the very laws of the Medes and Persians shall not change, yet we desire to keep your name exalted above all." Darius, unaware of their treachery, summoned his scribes and signed another decree, that anyone who prayed to any god or man other than the king himself would be cast into the lion's den. Unbeknownst to him, he had once again placed Daniel in jeopardy. As the edict spread across the kingdom, whispers tinged with both courage and fear traveled through the streets. Would Daniel forsake his God for the favor of an earthly king? The hearts of those who had come to believe began to tremble, but even as darkness cast its hue over Babylon, hope lingered thick in the air, for they were witnesses to a God who had not only shut the mouths of lions, but had revealed his glory through his faithful servant. And in this moment of uncertainty and intrigue, a question loomed above the hearts of the faithful. How far would Daniel's faith carry him? What greater revelation of God's sovereignty awaited not just him, but all of Babylon, as the stage was set for a divine confrontation? For the time had come for God's promise to unfold in ways they could scarcely imagine. When the decree of King Darius was made known throughout the land, the hearts of men quaked with fear and uncertainty. Among the throngs, Daniel stood firm, his heart unwavering, for he had witnessed the great faithfulness of his God. With the glimmer of dawn illuminating his window, he returned to his familiar place of prayer, facing Jerusalem, as was his custom since his youth. With prayer and supplication he bowed before the God of heaven, his voice undeterred by the threat looming over him. "O Lord my God," he prayed, "how great are your mercies! I come before you not for my own safety, but to plead for this broken land and for those whose eyes are blinded to your truth." In that moment the weight of the world seemed to fall upon his shoulders, yet his spirit soared, resting in the assurance of God's unchanging nature. Days passed, and the envious officials, their hearts steeped in malice, set a trap. They watched with keen eyes for any sign of disobedience. When they found Daniel persistently praying to his God, they raced back to Darius, their hearts rejoicing at the prospect of his downfall. "O King Darius," they exclaimed, "have you not established a decree that any man who prays to any god or man other than you shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king, caught in the snare of his own edict, was distressed. "Yes, the decree is true, and it cannot be altered," he replied. Yet the voice of conscience stirred within him as memories of Daniel's unwavering loyalty flooded his mind. But the officials pressed him further. "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, disregards you and your decree. He prays 3 times a day." Darius felt the weight of his regret, yet the laws of the Medes and Persians stood immutable. His heart yearned for Daniel, but he knew he must uphold the decree. "Bring him to me," he commanded, a heavy sorrow in his voice. As Daniel was brought in chains, he stood like a pillar of strength amidst the storm of betrayal. The king looked upon him, and in his eyes lay an unspoken hope. "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you," he murmured, as the soldiers led Daniel away, casting him into the den where lions lay, their eyes glinting like fiery coals in the darkness. The stone was rolled over the mouth of the den, sealing Daniel within. Darius returned to his palace, spending the night in fasting, refusing the comforts of food. His heart was tormented, longing for dawn and the potential of a miracle. With the first light of day, the king hurried to the den, his pulse quickening with dread. Approaching the stone, he called out, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Silence enveloped the air, an anxious moment hanging between heaven and earth. Then a voice broke through, steady and calm. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight." Darius rejoiced, his heart filled with awe at the greatness of a God who could defy the very laws of nature. He commanded the stone to be rolled back, and Daniel was lifted from the den, unharmed and untouched, just as God promised. As word spread throughout Babylon, not only did they witness a faithful servant's endurance, but they began to see the power of a living God who reigns supreme. And the king, in a loud voice, proclaimed, "I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and steadfast forever." Yet among the shadows of the palace, conspirators trembled, not solely at the memory of their failed plots, but at the stirring of something greater. For whispers of Daniel's unfaltering faith and God's vindication had begun to ripple across the land, inviting all to consider the sovereignty of the one who holds the fate of nations. Amidst this unfolding miracle, hope arose, intertwining itself with a question that now gripped the hearts of many. Could it be that God's deliverance of Daniel was merely a glimpse of a greater deliverance to come, that would span across centuries? For beyond the lions and the decrees of men lay the promise of a God who would reveal his ultimate plan, his steadfast faithfulness echoing through generations yet to come. And it came to pass that as Daniel emerged from the den, light flooded his countenance, reflecting the glory of the God who had delivered him. The gathered crowd beheld him with awe, their eyes wide in disbelief, as they witnessed the miracle of survival amidst ferocious beasts. The air was charged with a palpable reverence, for a profound truth was dawning upon them, that Daniel's God was not constrained by the boundaries of their understanding. "Let all my brethren hear," Daniel declared, his voice strong yet tender. "For it is our God who rescues us from the jaws of death. It is he who hears our prayers and delivers us from peril. Blessed be his name." Before the throne of Darius, men and women fell on their faces, acknowledging the sovereign power that had been revealed through Daniel's affliction. The king, overwhelmed with gratitude and reflection, commanded a ceremony of thanksgiving to the God of Israel. "Prepare offerings and sacrifices," he instructed the chief priests of the land, "for we shall honor the one who preserves life and triumphs over darkness." Within the royal palace, as the sacrifices were laid upon the altar, Daniel took a moment to pray once more. His heart was fervent, and the intimacy of his communion with God deepened. "O Lord, mighty and eternal, you have shown yourself in the furnace of adversity. Teach us to trust in your unfailing love, that we may walk in faith, not in fear." News of this miraculous deliverance traversed the nation's borders, reaching the ears of surrounding kingdoms. Those who had once mocked the God of Israel now murmured in reverence, recognizing the divine power displayed through his chosen servant. Envoys were sent from far and wide, drawn by curiosity and the whisper of the miraculous. Meanwhile, the conspirators who had plotted against Daniel found their hearts besieged by fear. The king, in his righteous anger, called for them to be brought forth. "You who conspired against a faithful servant of God, you shall face the fate you sought for him," he declared, and the very lions that had spared Daniel now rewarded their wickedness with swift justice. As the den consumed them, a somber silence settled over the kingdom, for it became evident that the Lord's hand was strong against those who sought to thwart his purposes. The narrative of discord transformed into a lesson of providence, an echo of the truth that righteousness endures while wickedness is laid low. In the days that followed, Daniel was elevated in honor and stature, yet he remained humble, recalling the faithfulness of God that transcends earthly glory. "It is not my strength nor my wisdom that has secured this place," he told those who sought his counsel, "but the grace of the Almighty who governs the affairs of men." Yet in the flickering shadows of the palace chambers, a divine mystery lingered. As Daniel meditated upon the visions and dreams that had troubled his heart previously, a profound revelation began to stir within him. What was this knowledge that seemed to pervade his spirit? What new understanding did God desire to unveil, hidden within the sacred chronicles of Israel's destiny? Surely, Daniel pondered, the deliverance from the lions is a mere foretaste of a more profound restoration. The hour is coming, the days are drawing near, when the God of heaven will set forth his plan, a new covenant, one that will shake the foundations of the earth and unveil the fullness of his redemptive purpose. And thus Daniel remained steadfast, unwavering in prayer and meditation, for the shepherds of Israel had yet to unveil the mysteries hidden in the scrolls of prophecy. In the hearts of the faithful, a collective anticipation began to rise as the shadows of history whispered the promise of the one who would come to save, leaving them poised for the revelation of a sovereign plan that stretches beyond the realms of their understanding. And in the days that followed, as Daniel walked with the favor of the king, the spirit of prophecy continued to stir within him. His heart, once troubled by visions of the night, now resonated with a divine cadence, a melody of hope mingled with anticipation. It was in the stillness of his chamber that he felt the ever-present whisper of the Spirit, urging him to delve deeper into the revelations concealed within the scrolls of his people. "Lord, grant me wisdom," he prayed fervently, casting his gaze toward the heavens. "Reveal to me the mysteries that lie ahead, that I may speak your words to those who are lost in darkness." And God in his boundless mercy honored Daniel's plea. He began to unveil secrets of the ages, showing him visions of kingdoms rising and falling, of the end times, and the great deliverance of his people. Daniel saw forth a figure that would rise, a promised one, whose coming would fulfill the ancient prophecies spoken by the mouth of Isaiah. "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder." Isaiah 9:6. The weight of this revelation pressed heavily upon Daniel's spirit, for he understood the significance of what he beheld. The end of captivity and the dawn of a new age was closer than he had dared to dream. He cried out to God, "O Lord, how shall your people endure through these trials? What hope do they have amidst the darkness that surrounds them?" God, in his profound wisdom, answered Daniel's prayer with clarity. "Fear not, for I am with you. I shall raise a people who will proclaim my name, and through them the world shall know the glory of the Lord. The remnant shall be saved, and they shall bear witness to my eternal covenant." With renewed vigor, Daniel began to write down the visions, the words transcribed with reverence and haste. His hand flowed with ink as the divine truths poured forth, for he understood that these words were not merely for his time, but were destined to transcend generations. In his heart, he resolved to preserve the promises of God, that his people would remain anchored in hope amidst the storms of uncertainty. As news spread throughout the kingdom of Daniel's miraculous deliverance and the mysteries unveiled to him, the people began to gather outside the palace. They longed to hear the words of encouragement and prophecy that surged from the heart of God's chosen prophet. "Come, let us listen to the voice of the Lord. Let us not forget his covenant, nor the outstretched arm that brought us out of darkness," they urged one another. And yet, beneath the surface of this growing faith, another plot was swelling. The adversaries of God's chosen ones would not remain silent. Envy and malice began to churn in the hearts of some leaders who had once rejoiced in the king's favor towards Daniel. "What if this prophet leads the people astray?" they whispered amongst themselves. "Let us devise a scheme that will put an end to his influence." Thus a cloud of tension hung over the kingdom, a stark contrast to the light of hope illuminating Daniel's prophetic revelations. In the night, as he prayed for wisdom and protection, Daniel could sense the chilling shadows of impending trials. But as the dawn broke on the horizon, a deeper understanding burgeoned within him, a divine affirmation that God was at work, weaving his sovereign plan through every challenge. "Even in darkness, your light shall guide us," he proclaimed in his heart, "for I trust in your steadfast love." Indeed, soon the plot would reveal itself, leading to a confrontation that would test the resolve of many. How would they respond when faced with the ultimate choice between faith and the world? And so Daniel awaited the unfolding of God's purpose, standing as a beacon of hope, fully aware that this was but a chapter in a grand narrative of redemption that had begun long before the foundations of the earth were laid. "The time shall come," he mused, "when the fullness of his promise will manifest before our eyes, if only we remain faithful." In the days that followed, news of growing dissent reached the ears of King Darius, stirring his heart to unease. The leaders within his court, once loyal, now whispered tales that cast shadow upon Daniel's exemplary conduct. "This man who interprets dreams and reveals mysteries seeks to pull our people from the embrace of the gods," they declared amongst themselves, fabricating lies like a spider spins its web. Yet the king, impressed and moved by Daniel's wisdom, remained steadfast. He appointed him above all others, a chief over the wise men of Babylon. Unbeknownst to him, the leaders conspired to entrap Daniel, knowing his unwavering devotion to his God would be his ultimate challenge. They schemed, if we are to find fault in him, we must do so regarding the law of his God. Thus they approached the king with a duplicitous proposal, saying, "O King Darius, live forever. Establish a decree that for 30 days no man shall make a petition to any god or man except to you, O king. Whosoever disobeys shall be cast into the den of lions." The king, flattered by their praise, signed the decree without hesitation, binding it with his royal seal. When Daniel learned of the decree, he returned to his chamber and knelt before the open window facing Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times each day, as was his custom, giving thanks to the Lord, his posture unwavering despite the risk of death. The fragrance of his faith ascended to the heavens even as darkness gathered around him. For Daniel, the choice between obedience to God and submission to men was as clear as the light of dawn. Soon after, the conspirators observed Daniel at prayer, their hearts swelling with glee. They rushed to the king, betraying him. "Daniel, who is of the exile of Judah, pays no attention to you, O king. He does not regard the decree you have signed, but makes his petition thrice a day." The king was greatly distressed, realizing the trap laid by those whom he had trusted. He sought to rescue Daniel, but the law could not be altered. As the sun set on that fateful day, Daniel was brought before the king. "O Daniel," the king lamented, "your God, whom you serve continually, will he deliver you from the lions?" Daniel's heart remained steadfast as he responded, not with words, but with the assurance that God would indeed protect him. Cast into the den, a stone was rolled over the entrance, sealing him in darkness. The night enveloped Daniel, yet within he found presence and peace. The king, unable to eat or find sleep, paced before the den, yearning for morning. At the break of dawn, as rays of light pierced the shadows, the king rushed to the den, calling out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" A voice echoed through the depths, "O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not hurt me, for I was found innocent before him." Overjoyed, Darius commanded Daniel to be lifted from the pit, and ordered his accusers to be thrown into the very den that had sought to consume him. In this act, God's sovereign hand was clearly revealed. Darius proclaimed, "I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever." And so the hearts of the people turned toward the true God, the same who had brought forth eternal deliverance through trials. Yet Daniel knew that this was but the beginning, for within the quiet of his heart He understood that God's sovereign plan extended far beyond this miraculous event. He pondered the greater purpose, the promise that lay ahead. Thus, at this junction still unfurling before them, a powerful revelation stirred within Daniel. What more lies hidden in the tapestry of prophecy? What other wonders await as the fullness of time approaches? The echo of God's sovereignty had begun to ripple through the ages, and with every faithful act his unfolding story drew ever nearer to its climax. And it came to pass that after Daniel was taken from the den, the king commanded that his accusers be brought forth. Their plot, which sought to uproot the faithful servant of God, met with swift justice, for as the lions swallowed them, the decree of Darius became a testament to the unfathomable power of the God whom Daniel served. The people of Babylon witnessed this great spectacle, and fear mingled with reverence filled their hearts. Word spread swiftly through the land, and in the marketplaces, the voices of traders hushed to whispers, recounting the miraculous reprieve granted to Daniel. They remembered the potency of the king's words, "For he is the living God, and steadfast forever." As the sun began to warm the earth in the days that followed, Daniel sought solitude. He retired to the quiet of his chamber, turning his heart towards the walls of Jerusalem, the city of his ancestors. There, in prayer, he poured out his gratitude and contemplation before the Almighty, acknowledging the mercy shown in his deliverance. "O Lord, great and holy, your hand has moved in my trial," he cried. "You have silenced the mouths of the lions, yet my spirit stirs with questions beyond this deliverance." And so it was that the scripture within him stirred, illuminating the scrolls that spoke of the coming of a great kingdom, one that would not perish but stand forever. He remembered the visions shared with him in his youth, visions that beckoned with promise. "What shall come to pass in the latter days? Which of your words shall find fulfillment?" Meanwhile, King Darius sought to understand the God of Daniel, for he saw the shadows of his awesomeness in the deliverance of his faithful servant. He summoned the wise men of his court, calling them forth to hear the accounts that emerged in the wake of the miracle. "Let me know of the prophecies, of the signs," he beseeched, eager to glimpse the divine designs underlying the events that had transpired. As the days turned to weeks, Daniel found favor with Darius, advising him not just as a counselor, but as one who bore the wisdom of the ages. He spoke of the God who delivers, who rescues, and who reveals mysteries. Even more profoundly, he expounded upon the visions of the ages to come, those laden with hope and warning. Yet amidst the tranquility, Daniel's heart remained stirred. Each revelation sprouted new burdens, for he saw in his prayers the stirrings of kingdoms to rise and fall. The image of the great statue with feet of iron and clay flashed through his mind, reminding him of the potent sway between divine will and human plots. The words echoed, "For the stone was cut not by human hands," and he marveled at the promise of a divine kingdom that shall never be destroyed. One night while Daniel prayed, an angel of the Lord appeared unto him, filling the room with radiance, saying, "O Daniel, greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you. The visions are for the end of days, and a great trial is yet to come. But fear not, for the God of all creation holds dominion." With renewed resolve, Daniel knew that his faith in God's sovereign plan must be steadfast, for in every divine purpose there existed a deeper secret still unfolding, threading through the tapestry of time. What great and terrible wonders would the Lord reveal before the culmination of prophecy? What trials awaited the faithful and the righteous? And so, with the dawn, Daniel vowed once more to seek the heart of God, for he understood profoundly that even the shadows of trials are to unveil the light of his everlasting dominion. Wherever the journey may lead, he clung to the truth. God's promises stand eternal. "The time draws near," he whispered deeply, his heart aflame with anticipation. "For in those ending days, all things shall be made known." In the days that followed the deliverance of Daniel, the spirit of Babylon was charged with uncertainty and awe. King Darius, filled with a desire to honor the one who had protected Daniel, issued a new decree that the people of his realm should tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. "For he is the living God," the king proclaimed, "and he shall endure forever. His kingdom shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end." As the decree spread like wildfire, the citizens of Babylon grappled with their faith. Many began to turn their hearts toward the God of Israel. Daniel, sensing a profound shift among the people, devoted his time not only to prayer, but to teaching the truth of the Almighty. His chamber became a sanctuary where believers gathered, eager to hear the wisdom of one who had stood boldly before peril. The nights were long, for Daniel sought deep counsel from the Lord. He often remembered the prophecies revealed in dreams, those visions that resonated like echoes through history. As he prayed, he felt the weight of their significance. The words from the scrolls stirred his spirit, and he sought understanding of the events that would soon unfold. It was on a night heavy with expectation that an angel once again appeared to Daniel. "Fear not, Daniel," the angel said, "for from the first day that you set your heart to understand, your words were heard." The angel's countenance shone resplendently. The very air seemed charged with divine presence. "I am come for your words. Know this: there are powers at work beyond what you can see, for the troubles of your people are deep. Yet those who endure shall be rewarded." With bated breath, Daniel awaited the revelations that would follow. The angel spoke of things that would unfold in the days to come, a fervent time marked by conflict and uncertainty. "Nations shall rise against nations, and the shadows of kings will loom heavy upon the earth," the angel warned. Yet the faithful will not remain forsaken. Torn between hope and dread, Daniel questioned the fate of his people, the ones who had long endured captivity. "O Lord, what shall become of Israel? Will your covenant endure even in the face of such turmoil?" The response was swift and certain. "Though trials are ordained, remember the promise given to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. For a remnant shall return, and they shall stand witness to the glory of the Lord. I will bring them back to the land flowing with milk and honey." Daniel's heart soared, tethered by the hope of restoration. Yet the vision of conflict loomed before him darkly. "There are kings who will rise and fall," the angel continued, "each one a piece in the sovereign plan of the Almighty. Yet fear not, for the time is coming when the stone shall strike the image, and the kingdoms of man shall be crushed, making way for the everlasting kingdom." Charged with the gravity of the message, Daniel grasped the profound implications of the divine revelations he had been entrusted with. He knew that he must remain steadfast, for trials would come not only for him, but also for all who stayed faithful to the commandments of God. As dawn approached, filled with the weight of what was to come, Daniel rose from his knees with a resolve burning in his heart. His spirit echoed the words of the prophet Isaiah. "Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened, that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy, that it cannot hear." The people of Israel, though scattered, would witness the unfolding of God's plan, each moment leading towards a crescendo of divine purpose. Beyond the shadows of conflict lay the assurance of God's covenant promise. And so as the sun rose over Babylon, a new chapter began, one where the tides of history were turning. And amidst the clamor of nations, the faithful awaited their sovereign's bidding. What radiant hope awaited on the other side of trial and tribulation? For in the fullness of time, even the darkest night would bear the dawn of divine revelation. In the days that followed the angelic visitation, Daniel's heart was heavy yet filled with resolve. He convened the elders of his people, addressing them with wisdom and urgency. "Brothers and sisters, the Lord has spoken. The trials that lie before us are not without purpose. We shall seek the face of the Almighty with fervent hearts and united spirits, for he has promised that a remnant shall return." Word of his word spread throughout the citadel. Those who had witnessed the might of the God of Daniel began gathering under the banner of faith, their whispers echoing the promises of Jehovah. As they convened in prayer and supplication, the atmosphere in Babylon shifted, leaving the stench of fear and uncertainty behind. One evening, as shadows lengthened and dusk enveloped the city, news reached Daniel of a great feast to be hosted by Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar. The king had called for an extravagant banquet, gathering nobles, satraps, and officials from all corners of the empire. They drank wine from sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem, mocking the God of hosts, reveling in their pride. Daniel felt a grave unease rise within him, and he sought the Lord fervently. O Lord, your name is blasphemed among the nations. Will you remain silent? As the revelry echoed through the city, the king's laughter boomed, intertwining with the melodies of utter disregard. In the midst of this excess, a peculiar sight unfolded. Fingers of a man's hand appeared writing on the plaster of the wall, illuminating the banquet hall with an eerie glow. Those present turned pale as they beheld this spectacle, and Belshazzar trembled, his knees knocking together in fear. Summoning his wise men and magicians, he demanded the meaning of the writing. Yet no voice could interpret the words inscribed by the divine hand. In that hour of dread and confusion, the Queen Mother entered, her eyes glistening with remembrance. "There is a man in your kingdom," she declared, "in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. He has understanding and knowledge. He can interpret dreams and solve mysteries. Call for Daniel." Daniel was summoned amid the tumult, for the king promised great rewards for any who could unveil the mystery. When he stood before Belshazzar, the king's countenance was marked by desperation. "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah?" he inquired, desperation coating his words. "I have heard of you, that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you can give interpretation." With calm dignity, Daniel replied, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to you, and make known to you the interpretation." As Daniel gazed at the king, he felt the weight of history pressing upon him. He recounted the proud reign of Nebuchadnezzar, the lessons he had learned through humility, and the power of the Almighty who deposed kings and raised them. "You have lifted yourself against the Lord of heaven," he proclaimed, casting a piercing gaze upon Belshazzar. "You have brought forth his vessels from the temple and feasted in blasphemy." The words pierced the air as he read aloud the inscriptions. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. God has numbered your kingdom, and it is finished. You have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. As Daniel delivered this sobering message, a profound silence engulfed the hall. The reality of his words quieted the revelry, revealing a fearsome truth. The sovereignty of God outweighed the fleeting pleasures of man, and that very night, as the Babylonian Empire was shaken to its foundations, a new chapter approached. Little did Daniel know that this moment of revelation was but a prelude to greater trials that awaited, in which the hand of God would guide his people through deeper valleys and on to the paths of redemption. What divine mystery lay before the faithful of Israel? For as night fell upon Babylon, the sun was preparing to rise upon a new kingdom, heralding the dawn of God's sovereign plan unfolding through uncharted lands and generations to come. And thus, the night of reckoning fell upon Babylon, shrouded in the shadow of divine judgment. The very hand that had inscribed a warning upon the wall now rippled through the hearts of the people, as the dread of impending doom loomed over them. King Belshazzar, his eyes wide with fear upon hearing Daniel's interpretation, felt the grip of terror as the weight of his pride and blasphemy bore down upon him. With the stroke of midnight, the Medes and Persians crept in, their resolve firm as prophecy unfurled before them. They had come to claim the kingdom, the very throne that had mocked the God of Israel. Over the body of feasting revelers, the banners of Babylon fell, ushered in by the sovereign hand of the Almighty. A new reign dawned, one that would change the course of history. Yet amid the chaos, Daniel remained undeterred, for he had seen beyond the horizon of calamity into a tapestry guided by the sovereign will of Yahweh. "O Lord," he prayed, "with gratitude I embrace your unparalleled authority. In the midst of destruction, your promise stands firm." At the break of day, the news of Babylon's fall echoed far and wide. The people, awakening to a new era, began to grasp the significance of the prophetic words that had come forth from the lips of Daniel. A remnant gathered, hearts burning with hope and faith. They yearned for the truth of the God who sees, the God who saves, and who had carried them through their afflictions. Darius, now king, found himself intrigued by the man whose faith had braved the lion's den, and whose words had echoed in the corridors of prophecy. He summoned Daniel, recognizing the divine wisdom resting in him. "Your God shall be my God," Darius declared solemnly. Understanding that the realms of power were subject to a higher authority, he proclaimed a decree for the entire kingdom, Let all men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, whose kingdom shall never be destroyed. A resurgence of faith swept through the nation, as the people began to turn their hearts toward Jerusalem, desiring to seek the God of their ancestors. With Daniel at the helm of this spiritual revival, they found purpose and strength, rekindling the covenant that had bound their forefathers to the eternal promises of their God. Days turned into weeks, and miraculously, the remnant began to return, responding to the call that had lain dormant but was now awakened by the ever-faithful God. The faithful stood upon the ruins of a once great empire, ready to rebuild, with renewed hope coursing through their veins. Daniel guided them diligently, recounting God's faithfulness, sharing visions of restoration, peace, and renewal. "For I know the plans I have for you," he reminded them, declares the Lord, "plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." With every step, the remnants of Israel drew closer to understanding the full embodiment of redemption. They began to perceive that their God had orchestrated a beautifully woven tapestry of hope and salvation, allowing the trials of captivity to refine their faith and strengthen their resolve. As Daniel continued to interpret dreams and visions, he found himself caught in a divine insight, a promise of a future deliverer, the one who would come to fulfill the covenant, with not just a physical remnant, but with all mankind. He saw a vision of a stone cut from the mountain without hands, a stone that would crush nations, ushering in the everlasting kingdom of God. And so, with each prophetic revelation, Daniel solidified the hope of Israel, holding fast to the truth that God's plans would unfold into eternity. He stood as a bridge between the past and a glorious future, where all nations would one day bow before the living God who reigns supreme. Even in the shadows of old Babylon, light shone through, revealing that every difficult chapter served to lead to a divine purpose. The legacy of Daniel's faith became a wellspring of inspiration, encouraging those who followed to embrace the truth that within the hearts of the faithful lies the unyielding promise of God's deliverance. As the stories of Daniel's faith, courage, and restoration spread like wildfire across the earth, lives were transformed, hearts renewed, and souls uplifted in the knowledge that their God was faithful, powerful, and forever sovereign. Let this testament remind us that in moments where darkness pursues relentlessly, we serve the God who parts seas and shuts the mouths of lions. As Daniel's legacy continues through the generations, let us too stand firm in faith, ready to usher in the glorious hope in God's perfect plan for salvation. And behold, as we gather together, let us lift our voices in praise to the one who calls us forth, who loves us deeply, and who leads us in unwavering trust. For indeed, his steadfast love endures forever. As you meditate upon this powerful narrative, I invite you now, don't miss out on what God is doing. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and these life-changing stories. Remember to leave a like now. Your interaction is a tool to help spread God's Word through the algorithm. Comment below your spiritual reflections and how the story of Daniel has impacted your faith, and don't wait even one more second to share instantly this message of hope with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth today. Together, let us ensure that the light of His glory shines upon all the world.